Thank you for joining us here today for the How to Integrate Design Thinking in the Classroom webinar. So I am Andrea from the MakerBot Education team, and I'm being joined here by Felipe, who is an industrial designer. He leads the creative team here at MakerBot, and he works very closely with the MakerBot EDU team. So Felipe, do you want to say hi?
Hi. We've probably seen each other in some of the pro webinars. It's great to be joining you know, in I guess the first live webinar from EDU side. But yeah,
it is.
Excited to be here.
Yep, happy to have you here. All right, and so just wanted to give you guys a quick outline of our presentation here today. So we're going to talk a little bit about MakerBot Education, what we do, the certification program for students, and going to give you guys a sneak peek of it, as well as our educator solutions that we have for you. All right, so moving on, a little bit about MakerBot Education. So within MakerBot Education, we have things that we really do care about. So apart from having, easy to use 3D printers, the largest 3D printing community, and an excellent support team, we also, from the EDU team, work very hard to provide our educators with an ecosystem where both our educators and our students can really thrive in their environment, and the teachers can really take their classrooms to whole new levels.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting, to think about how what we call the two verticals of MakerBot complement each other, the education one and the professional one, where we see the education as sort of a bridge into the professional world, right? How do we get kids prepared for sometimes even, and we'll touch on that later, but the jobs that they'll be getting in the future.
Right.
And I think it's,
Yeah, and it actually leads us to our next quote that says 65% of children entering primary school today will ultimately end up working in completely new jobs that don't yet exist. So I think that's very true, and I think it's a great way for us to be talking to everyone here today, EDU and Pro, because a lot of the things that we do here are preparing students for jobs that don't quite yet exist. And even me, I never studied for this job, but here I am today. Right?
Well, it's as easy as thinking or remembering that MakerBot has been around since 2009. That was right when I was about to graduate college. So the company that I work for didn't even exist when I started studying my degree, which is kind of crazy to think about.
Right, and when I was in college, we didn't have any 3D printers in our university, right? Whereas now, if I go back there, they have a really nice center with a bunch of 3D printers I would have loved to have used.
Yeah, it's
And so if we go to the next slide, we can see why 3D printing is so important for the future of instructional technology. So having this technology really affects the classroom in a very positive manner. Students perform better in all content areas because they're learning critical thinking skills. They are more involved in the design thinking process. They're more motivated, they're more engaged because they're taking an active role in the learning process. And it also prepares them for the workforce. So I think that's great. And talking about, the professional world, preparing students for the workforce, it also brings us to design thinking, right? And so we do have a design thinking cycle that we use here at MakerBot, and you can see it here in this slide. It's ask, sketch, and make. And so Felipe is an industrial designer, and so I imagine you've used design thinking quite often. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Right. So overall, it's a methodology that's been around for a while now. But the general idea is, how do you solve a problem creatively, right? How do you create solutions for something? And sometimes it's associated to like problem-based learning, kind of lateral thinking. The general idea is, give you the tools not to come up with a single answer, but rather a process for tackling a problem, right? Because most of the time it's not so much about the answer that you come up with, but rather the way that you get to that answer what matters the most. So you have this cycle that starts with asking a question, making sure that you fully understand what you're trying to address, the problem that you're trying to solve for. There's a few different things that you usually do either as a designer, as a student, in different fields, right? You could ask questions directly to your end users, asking questions around the different applications that your product will have, asking questions around the specific problem at hand, right? So trying to understand that problem. And, be just as a side note, feel free to ask questions to us now through the comment section. We forgot to introduce Allison and Simon here in the behind cameras running the show. But just so you know, we are running a live chat on that YouTube feed. You're more than welcome to ask questions. We'll be answering them at the end, or if they become really pressing, then we'll jump right to them. But so you start a design cycle by asking questions, right? You're trying to define the problem. You're trying to define what it is that you're solving for. Right. Then you'll get into the sketch section of the process, which basically is a way to capture all of the things that the quick ideas that you want to come up with to answer those questions.
Brainstorming kind of stage, right?
Exactly. And brainstorming is nothing new, but how it plugs to this cycle is an interesting thing, right? How do you create a quick draft of your idea, whether that be like a literal sketch of the idea, in a post-it note, or in a, just writing it down, or even you can think about starting or getting close to the making side of things, which is actually developing a quick test, a quick prototype that could allow you to test that idea out, right? So you're just kind of drafting a possible solution without necessarily getting into the final result of it. And the final section is actually making the thing, right? So let's say, let's take something as an example. Let's say that I'm going to be, I don't know, doing something simple like a pen holder, right? That sounds like a straightforward question, but once you start defining it more, then you figure out what types of pens am I going to be holding? Is it 1? Is it 20?
Right.
Where would this pen holder be living? Is it on my desk, on my backpack, somewhere else? And then once I've phrased my problem correctly, so I'm saying, I'm holding 5 pens in my backpack, and it needs to be something lightweight. Okay, then I can start sketching ideas out, right? So I'll go about, coming up with quick ideas, maybe on the size, maybe on the way that it closes and opens, maybe on the way that I can lock it, or the way that I store the pens. And then I get into the making part of things, which is kind of really interesting, where the ideas come to life in a way. So there's a million tools. Of course, here at MakerBot, we have the great opportunity to use 3D printers 24/7. It doesn't always have to be that, but it's a great way to go about creating things.
Yeah.
But it could be a cardboard prototype, it could be just a paper prototype, and the whole point here is that once you made something, since again this is just a draft prototype, you'll probably come up with more questions, right? So you'll probably be able to rephrase that initial problem and go back into the asking section. So it's kind of a cycle where once I have a prototype, I'm testing it out and I'm saying, okay, does this really fulfill the initial question? And maybe that gets me closer to it, but it adds more information to the cycle, and it allows me to better phrase or rephrase the problem at hand. And then I get again into this loop, and slowly and iteratively I start getting closer and closer to a final solution. So that's kind of a maybe too long explanation of what it is, but yeah.
Right. And I think it's also important to note, especially in education, that within the design thinking cycle, we want you to fail. Someone has the acronym for FAIL, first attempt in learning, right?
Okay,
and so where you learn from, what could be considered failures, but maybe just steps along the way as you're working to improve those designs, those prototypes. You fail, but you're also taking notes, you're learning from those mistakes and improving upon them, which I think is super important.
And beforehand, it's been always I guess when I was growing up, I'm not that old, but when I was growing up, it used to be we all used to have this idea of, failures are something to avoid, but it's I think it was IDEO IDEO is a design consultancy, who first pivoted on that idea and established this concept of failing fast to succeed sooner. So the more mistakes that I'm able to make, the closer I'm getting to the final solution.
Right.
And if I make mistakes in an early stage, then I'm not making the mistake at the end of it, at the the final result. So.
Right. I think that's super important. And so I think that kind of brings us to what we really want to introduce to you guys. So we always love to listen to our educators, what you have to say, kind of what you want to see as well. And our top 2 requests were, to give students the tools to know, how to use the printers, how to take ownership of this technology, to use it, to the fullest potential. And also how to integrate design thinking with 3D printing, because it might not be so easy the first time around when you're first getting started with 3D printing. And so using, what everyone had to say, we decided to start working on MakerBot Certification for students. And so if we go to the next slide, we can actually see a very brief overview of what it's about. So MakerBot Certification Program for students focuses on design thinking for students, as well as how to use the printer, how to design for 3D printing. And so there's 4 modules. So you can see there we have 4 lovely little images there. And so we'll go a little bit more into it a little later on. You'll see also a sneak peek of one of the levels. But pretty much it goes through printer setup, it goes through an in-depth look at design thinking, and then students actually get to build on the design thinking skills that they learn, use it in practice, and then they get to prototype designs for 3D printing.
I think that one of the things that we heard the most, as you were saying, like from educators, is like 3D printers got really adopted really fast within the STEM community, right, and specifically in the education section. But more often than not, people got the printers and then wouldn't know what to do with it, right? So I can print stuff, and then what? And I think to some degree, we contributed to that, where people started printing anything, like nowadays in Thingiverse, the platform that we support, you can find any type of model, any type of little figurine. And sometimes, that might not be the best use of the machine, right? So how do you understand and go beyond just the possibility of printing something,
right,
but kind of printing with a purpose, right? How do you make sure that you as a student, you as a teacher are getting the most out of the machine beyond just learning what 3D printing is, the fact that you can 3D print something, but rather, now that I know that I can do that, what can I do with it? What are the problems that I can solve for and with these machines?
Absolutely. And this program does take you through that whole process of learning, how to use the 3D printer in the first place, what is 3D printing, how to print something simple, and then going past that, just like you said, really using that printer to its fullest potential. And so before we jump into the actual curriculum and what the certification program has, we just wanted to show you guys a few examples of what we've seen in the classroom as far as design thinking is being used. So if we go to the next slide, so here you can see the Ask Sketch Make cycle again, and so this is the cycle that these teachers use in the classroom. They might use cycles that look similar to it. They might have 5 steps, they might have 8 steps, but a similar cycle is always being used. And so the first example that we have is of a senior student. His name is Justin Herman from Newton High School in New Jersey. And so one of his classmates has a physical disability where she wasn't able to actually open the locker because she was seated in a wheelchair. And so, he saw that, that this was a struggle, and so he tried to come up with ways to resolve that issue. And so he created this sort of device that allows her to just pull down on the locker to open it instead of having to push up to open the locker first, since they can be a little complicated to open. And so what I think is so neat about this is that process made him realize that he wanted to open up his own company.
Oh, really?
For biomedical engineering.
No way.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So I think it's really great how,
Talk about career readiness.
Right, absolutely. So 3D printing kind of, it didn't pave the way, but it gave him an idea or kind of that spark to say, hey, I really like doing this. I want to do more of it. How can I help more people? And it went from there.
It's very interesting to think about, the fact that there's really no small problems, right? If you look at it from the most basic point of view, you're just trying to open a door. It's as simple as that, right? But how do you come up with a solution for a specific, again, it's kind of going back to that whole asking section of the cycle where, okay, you want to open a door, that sounds easy enough, but then what happens when your user is a specific person, when your setting is a specific setting, when it's not just a door but your locker door.
Right.
So it is a really neat example of the
Right.
technology being
Yeah,
used.
absolutely. And then our next example is about the Enable Prosthetic Hand. I'm sure everyone here has heard about the Enable Hand project. And what we think is so great about this is that with this prosthetic hand project, students actually have the ability to look at the schematics. They can look at the printable files and actually tune it, to make it their own or to try and find a more efficient way to use them, not necessarily for themselves, but for others, for loved ones as well. And so they go through that design thinking process where they have to, sit down with that person, ask them about their experiences, and really brainstorm to see how they can change this design to better suit that person.
And this one specifically almost became a whole community on its own, right? Where people are constantly contributing, as you were saying, like designs to it, changes to it, different kind of, I won't call them hacks, but maybe changes or design optimizations for different applications, whether it be just, for grasping objects or for a different type of use case.
Yeah. No, it's really great. And then our last example is from an educator here, Leslie Perry, from Whitby School. And so she uses MakerBot replicators to teach, creativity and problem solving. Here they have to create their own village. And so 3D printing doesn't have to be the end goal to provide the solution, right? It's the prototype. And so here you can see that students are using things that they created through 3D printing to build this village. And maybe it doesn't work, and maybe a house is too big, and they have to rethink, how they're building these structures and go through that design thinking process again and again.
Yeah. And it goes to say, like just the breadth of projects that you've shown here, the different type of products or not products, but ideas that come up from the same process and the same logic, almost the same tool to some degree, but how flexible these tools are when being applied into a problem, into a set of, or a process, I suppose, right? From
Absolutely.
Opening a door, getting a
prosthetic hand,
and then, or just creating a village sample.
Yeah, I think design thinking
Urban
is
planning.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Urban planning, yes. And so now we do want to show you guys a little bit more about the student certification program here. So we're going to give you guys a bit of a sneak peek, a closer look. And so first, though, do want to kind of walk you through what the curriculum is. There are 4 levels in total for student certification. And so if we go a couple slides ahead, we can see that level 1 is 3D printer operator. And so for any educators watching right now, let us know if you've actually taken, teacher certification, because teacher certification also has this very similar level for 3D printer operator.
Yeah.
And
well, no, just saying, like, the idea is kind of to get both the students and the teachers to the same level, the same degree of, I would say, like mastery in how to use a printer, right?
Yeah.
Because it's important for them to also understand how the machine works. And these machines are super intuitive, super user-friendly, but still,
absolutely.
The technical aspect of printing is covered really well here.
Right, I agree. There's some really great content here, especially if, if your students or even you as an educator are kind of scared to touch the printer or really start interacting with the technology, or if your students are a little wary of the technology, this is a great kind of first step to get them to really get hooked on this technology and kind of see the potential of what they can do. It also goes through, some light troubleshooting, what to do with the printer, all the little parts of the printer, so you know everything about it and you can speak to it. And so that's level 1. And then level 2 is the design thinking. So this is kind of where we kind of switch gears a little bit and start talking about the design thinking cycle. And in this level is where we have another industrial designer and an educator. His name is Reed Schlegel, and he goes through the ins and outs of design thinking. And so we do have a bit of a sneak peek for you here, and so I'm going to go ahead and show you that.
So now that we have all of these pain points organized into 3 categories, how do we start sketching conceptual solutions for them? First off, all you need is a stack of paper and a writing implement. I personally love Papermate flares or good old-fashioned Sharpies, but anything will work. I also like to sketch on color printer paper, Post-it notes, or my notebook, but any paper will work as well. Start by taking each pain point category and thinking of as many creative solutions as you can for each, and begin sketching them out. Don't worry if you're not comfortable sketching. I will teach you the basics of quick concept sketching to get you started in the next video. Make sure to think as widely as possible. No idea is ever a bad idea. In fact, the weirder the ideas, the better, because strange ideas often spark new and fun solutions. The point is to take all that you learn from asking questions and make as many cool concepts out of them as possible. So remember, no sketch is a bad sketch. Just get loose, have fun, and be creative. After I have sketched every idea that I can think of, I love to collaboratively brainstorm with other people. A single person can only come up with so many ideas, so it's always fun to brainstorm with other people to inject new creative energy and ideas and get additional, diverse opinions and perspectives. When brainstorming, do your best to build on these ideas. Remember that any idea can spark an even better idea in someone else you are brainstorming with. Basically, always think yes and. This will make every concept build into bigger and cooler ones over time. After you sketch as many ideas as possible, take your favorite and mash them all together into super concepts that would really get the people you ask questions excited. Once you have a few bigger ideas, resketch them and make sure each tells the whole story of the idea. Use your favorite colored marker to call out important parts. Use notes, or we like to call callouts, to tell specifically what the idea does. And always make sure you name your ideas. A concept with a name is always easier to remember and more likely to become real. Now that you know why we sketch and why it helps us to solve problems, join me for the next video in our series where I will show you how to take your concept sketching skills up a notch.
Alrighty, we hope you guys enjoyed that little sneak peek of what you can see from level 2 of design thinking. So that's just one video of about 10 videos that we have for that level. And so to accompany it, we also have quizzes, activities that go with it, as well as worksheets. And so through there, Reed talks about, how to ask questions, how to sketch solutions, which I think is really important. He really goes, in other videos, he goes in detail with how to actually sketch your ideas out, how to brainstorm them, and also how to present them to others, because I think that's really important.
Definitely, and I think we just barely touched on the surface of this process of asking, sketching, and making, but it's important to know that there's more to it, right? And he goes really in depth into the specific many specific techniques around each of these sections, right? How do you ask questions? How do you phrase an interview? How do you approach your audience? How do you sketch? Some of his techniques.
Yeah.
If you guys have followed him on Instagram, which you should, he's got an amazing account. Some of his techniques for sketching and getting those ideas out. And finally, he actually creates a product, right? He actually develops a...
He does, and we actually have an example of it. If you want to pull it
over there.
up. Yeah, so within level 2 of design thinking, he actually creates a new sort of lunchbox to answer a problem where, one of your classmates could be having a problem with their lunchbox. Maybe it's too big, it's too small, it doesn't fit their food. Maybe they're an athlete and they have, other priorities, other types of food that they're wanting to store.
So he created these kind of modular lunch boxes that he printed out, and he goes about explaining the reasoning behind them, the different prototypes that he created, how did he come up with the ideas, how did he sketch them out, and I think it's a really interesting one because it's a very simple problem that we are all familiar with. We've all had lunch boxes. I still have mine, but we can all relate to it. But the fact that it's an easy problem to understand doesn't make it an easy problem to solve, right? So that's an interesting thing that Reed covers on his section.
Right.
Definitely.
There's a lot of things to consider that you realize kind of along the way as he explains kind of what the problem is, how we ask our audience how they would like their lunchbox or how what they might prefer. But it's also really great to be able to see the entire process.
Definitely.
So we see it, come just from words and then sketching on paper, just rough ideas, to roughly finished prototypes. So it's very loud, but you can see here there's a container over here. So that's level 2 of design thinking. And then we have level 3, and that is applied design thinking.
Hosted by you.
Hosted by me, yes. So in applied design thinking, you get to spend some lovely time with me going through design thinking, but applied. So we take what we learn, from Reed's previous videos, from his lessons, from all the activities that we did in level 2, and we apply it. So we have a problem where we have a locker, and there are far too many things in this locker for the student, and we have to try and resolve it, right? So we talk with the person who has this locker. We get an idea of what their environment is. We go through the whole questions, and we have the students kind of do it along with us. We have them work in groups, work with their classmates. Maybe not everyone has lockers, but we all have our own sort of storage area,
Correct.
right? Or storage organizers that maybe could be improved upon.
Yeah. And you're touching on another very important thing here. On the coursework that we have on certification, it's also planned for the classroom setting, right? So so that kids get to actually interact, like you do in the workforce, like we do that, right?
Right.
Working together with somebody else, and then trying to come up or to tackle a problem. It's rare that you do it on your own, but rather you have to
Absolutely.
collaborate with different stakeholders, understand not only the customer or the user, but also the other partners that are helping you develop the solution.
Right, and other partners can also help give you different perspectives. They might have thought of something differently or approached it differently than you might have originally, right? So that brainstorming, that group brainstorming really helps to create really innovative, fresh ideas. And then the last module, which is hosted by you, Felipe, is Design for 3D printing. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I didn't choose that photo. I'll say that much. But,
I'm sorry.
no, so it's interesting to think about the fact that a 3D printer, just like any other tool, it's not. It's super intuitive to use, but there are definitely best practices and things that you want to understand when printing something. Whether that be because of the specific printer that you're using. For instance, I have a couple of examples here of the same part. So this part was printed on our education printer, our Replicator Plus printer, and this part was printed on our newest machine, our professional machine, the Method printer. They use a thing called supports that's going to help your part print, right? When you're printing something, you're not just submitting it, but you have to think about how the machine is going to process that shape and how is it going to come to life. In this one, you can see like these lines in the shape are actually support structures that help me, print the actual part. Because if you're printing kind of in thin air, that part is going to be a little bit, Allison is bringing that closer to the camera. The part is going to be kind of difficult to support, but with a newer machine, you can print with soluble supports, and what happens then is that these supports, so you see the orange versus the white. The white section is actually a soluble material that can dissolve in water, which makes it super easy to remove, but it's a different platform, right? So thinking about what are the specific constraints that you're bound by when using a machine? What's the best way to orient a part? How do you save material sometimes by optimizing the print parameters? That's kind of what we're trying to cover on that level.
Right, absolutely. Because I think, one thing is knowing how to use a 3D printer and how to 3D print something, but then it's a whole other thing to be familiar with it and design for 3D printing in mind, right? Because we can, we're able to create, like print in place parts where we can create things that are kind of like chain linked together, not need supports for it. So we can use all those tools together to create a super strong prototype for what you're trying to solve.
Yeah.
I think that's great. And so those are our 4 modules for design thinking for certification for students. And if you have any questions about student certification, do let us know. We're happy to hear them. But if you are interested to hear a little bit more about our purchasing options, our bundle options for student certification, they are sold primarily as classroom bundles, but also for school level and district level if you're looking to deploy,
At scale.
At scale.
Yeah. And what we were saying before, right? So the logic behind this is like to empower as many students as we can, and also comes with the teacher certification as well, so that it's kind of like a whole bundle system where kids learn, get the most out of it, the teachers as well. They are both kind of in an even playing field, that they understand the technology, they understand the process, and ultimately it's, well, our aim and our hope is that they get something valuable from it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we can go on to the next sections. So it's not just about student certification. We do have a whole ecosystem for the educator as well. If the educator is looking to start design thinking and they want something for themselves as well. So we have Thingiverse Education. And so this one, it's great. It's absolutely free. You can access it right now or after this webinar. But Thingiverse Education, there's 600 lessons that are ready to go, and a grand majority of them center on design thinking in some aspect, right? And these lesson plans are great. They are approved one by one by the MakerBot Education team, and a lot of them do align to NGSS standards or Common Core standards. Sometimes they'll have the state standards that align to your state, depending on which educator uploads those lessons.
Definitely, and it's a super powerful resource to get started, because as Andrea was saying, it's not down to any specific type of application, right? It's not Thingiverse is kind of our neutral platform where we allow anybody, regardless of the machine, regardless of the setting, to come up with ideas and share it with the audience. So in that way, I think it's really great for you to get started. I would encourage everybody here to actually go in and check them out.
And also, students that are over age can actually post their designs, their creations to Thingiverse as well for the community to see. The community can give them feedback as well on their projects too. And then if we go on to the next one, we have the MakerBot Educator's Guidebook.
Right.
Yeah, which is a super valuable book. I think it includes a crash course on 3D printing, and it has 9 lesson plans that are ready to go to use in the classroom. And a good amount of them also center on design thinking.
Definitely, and it's a great reference. So, and by the way, also, as we get closer to the Q&A part of this webinar, if you want some of these assets, we do have them available. So do reach out to hello@MakerBot. We'll reiterate that email at the end of it. But many of these assets, we do make them available for you guys to download and to use. The guidebook is also available in Amazon. But it's a great resource to have in the classroom once you get started with 3D printing too.
Absolutely. And then the next resource that some of you might already be familiar with is the MakerBot Certification Program for educators. And so do let us know if you've already taken these courses with us. But pretty much it's divided into 2 levels, right? So level 1 is MakerBot Operator, similar to the student certification, first level. And again, the educators learn about 3D printing, how to set up the printer, because I think a lot of the times teachers at the beginning of the year, they walk into their classroom and they see a big, huge box in the room, and it's a MakerBot, it's a 3D printer, and they don't know how to use it, right?
And we hear it a lot, like as, maybe a teacher moved on, or, they inherited the machine from somebody else and they don't really know how to get started with it.
Right.
That's a great way to actually get your feet in the water, lose the fear for the machine, and feel like you actually, feel confident about your approach to the machine. So.
Absolutely, and you can, again, as the educator, take ownership of that printer, of that technology, and then with student certification, those students can be kind of on board with you, and everyone can learn, how to use design thinking with 3D printing.
Oh, and in some states, you do get the credits, right?
Yes.
With teacher certification.
Right, in New York, you do right now. But we are working on getting credit for other states as well.
What's the name of it? CTLE?
CTLE.
CTLE credits, yeah.
And then the second level for certification for for teachers, for educators, is Curriculum Creator. And so it's the next step in, after you master 3D printing, after you master the MakerBot printer, it's, okay, how do I actually use this technology in the classroom? I know what it does. How do I use it, right? How can I help, teach my lesson plans? How can I strengthen these lesson plans, my curriculum? And so through level 2, we give you the tools to kind of teach the 3D printing process. So we actually have you create a print kit. And a print kit, it's kind of similar to some of the concepts that you go over just on a more basic level, like what are supports? You know, what is a raft? What is an overhang?
Right.
And so it's a kit that you can show to your students as a quick reference to say, okay, you know, keep this in mind when you're printing. And you can also troubleshoot files. You, at the very end of it, create a 3D printing project for your students that you can use in the classroom. You can also upload it to Thingiverse Education to share with your community as well. And then here you can see an example or a couple examples of the print kit assignment. Some of these are really, really nice examples. So you can see some of them go over layer resolution, infills, some of the nuts and bolts of 3D printing.
And some of them are way in depth, like that motor. I love the motor. Like, you know,
The
somebody
motor,
printed
yeah,
the whole
on the far
assembly of a
left.
V8.
That's really nice.
Side note, I like that.
And then in this last slide is an example of some of the lesson plans that have come out of certification for educators. And some of them are, well, all of them are really, really cool. They're super new, and it's great to see how these educators are finding ways to use this technology in the classroom, whether it be history, physics, music as well, and art, really anything is
It's
possible.
really interesting also to see how, you know, most of the time, at least, you know, for a few years, it's been associated 3D printing with STEM or with the workshop session. But the whole point of it is that you're able to actually use it in many different subjects, right? Whether you're using it for music or for math or for history. And that's one of the great things about it, that it's kind of this approach, this hands-on approach that ultimately gives you a better understanding of the subject at hand, I think, you know, just by going beyond just that lesson, that write-up that you get in a book or a written assignment, but actually doing something with that new information.
Right.
I think, at least for me, you know, for different types of learning, styles of learning, it does help a lot and makes a difference on how much do you get from that class, regardless of whether that class is a workshop class or a STEM class, you know, but many
Right.
of them can actually benefit from this physical, tangible approach.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it bleeds into their personal lives as well. They see how they're using this technology in those different subject areas, and they think, okay, you know, maybe I can fix this problem I'm having, or maybe, you know, I've been trying to fix this thing. I can use 3D printing in this way to resolve this problem.
It becomes a tool and not
It
longer
does.
like this foreign object.
Yeah, exactly. It does. And so I think that brings us to the end of the slides that we have here. And so we'd love to hear the questions that you have. We do also have a promo that's going on. Felipe, if you can tell us a bit about
So
that.
while Simon starts capturing some of the questions that we have, good to know that we're having a promo running right now that includes many of the things that we discussed. It's actually a bundle promo where you buy 2 printers and you get the certification program for students. You save about almost $2,000, $1,900 and some change. It's a great one. If you want to check it out, again, that email hello@MakerBot. Reach out and we can let you know more about it, because it's a great way to get the classroom set up and kind of started with all of this. You get the guidebook, you get the extruders, the material. It's kind of like the whole
It's
setup getting started.
Right, you're ushered into that ecosystem already, so that's great.
And with that, I know what are the questions that we're seeing.
Okay. Yes, so Melissa Culver, an instructional technology coach, asks if there is a location online that showcases Common Core aligned lesson plans.
So Melissa is asking, hi Melissa, asking about the location online for Common Core.
State standards, right? So actually, if you do go to Thingiverse Education, you can filter all of the lesson plans. Right now, you can filter them by NGSS or Common Core State Standards. So that's where you would go. You can filter through there and then find all the lesson plans that fall under that criteria.
So go thingiverse.com/education, or you can click on the Education tab, and there on the left, you'll see that filtering menu.
Yeah,
we can send you a screenshot if you want, but yeah.
So Desmond Martin asks, how would we differentiate the design thinking cycle from the engineering design process, or would you even differentiate them?
So Desmond, rephrasing that question, how do we differentiate the design thinking cycle from the engineering cycle? And you know, it's kind of funny how the quick answer is they are the same thing. They are trying to solve for the same problem, which is how do you solve for a problem, right? They're very similar, and as Andrea was saying, like different textbooks will have different answers on that. What are the specific steps? But the general goal is the same. In this case, we've actually made it specific for students to benefit, kind of simplifying in these 3 big steps. But that's exactly the goal. How do you create this bridge so that students that are learning on design thinking can later on get the same kind of tools for an engineering school, an industrial design school, but that's kind of the goal here. We are trying to expose them to the same tools that professionals like myself are using. It's, it can have different names, but the goal is still the same idea. How do you create this critical problem-solving approach to a problem? So, yeah, great question.
And Joyce is asking, where can she find the video series that we showed from the student certification?
Right. So, Joyce, quick answer. Well, I don't know if you want to answer that one.
So Joyce asked where she can find all the videos, like the sneak peek that we showed. So that is available if you purchase the student certification classroom bundle or any of the other bundles. You actually get access to our LMS, or learning management site, where the students and you as the teacher, where teacher certification is also available, will be able to go through all the courses, the videos, the worksheets, the quizzes,
I would
really
recommend
everything.
also, like, as a teacher, one good way to get started is that teacher certification, because it's an online course, and it's a nice way to get into it. I think it's $99 for the online lesson, online
only version,
online only version, but you do get the credits. So that way you'll be looking at the operator course and the curriculum creator course. It's a nice way to get started. We're planning on releasing some of these lessons, but samples of them. So not the full lesson. For the full lesson, of course, you need to get the course in the classroom. But we're working on that.
Yeah, exactly.
And Jeff is asking, how do we have students document their design process? And have we considered doing a reverse engineering project where we give students a print and they have to figure out how to reproduce it?
Yeah. So certification, I think, never stops, really. We're always... Oh, right. So...
Hi, Jeff.
Hi, Jeff.
We got prompted to restate the question.
Yes.
Sorry about that.
So, Jeff asked... I forgot the first question already.
How do we get students to document?
So how do we get students to document it, and have we ever thought about reverse engineering a print? So... to document, we're actually going to have a template available through student certification, where in level 3, the applied design thinking portion, where they follow along, where they take the active role in actually creating a solution, they actually document every step of the process from ask, sketch, make. We break it down a little bit more, where we say, okay, ask the audience, collect the information, organize your pain points, what are they, and then we have them document the brainstorming process, so on and so forth.
And it's interesting to say that, it's as we created these lessons, we made sure, because we actually quite literally created those lessons, we made sure that it wasn't just a set of videos, right? So it's a set of assets. So you get the videos, then you get the written version of it. So there's quite a few decks that have been created for you to actually have the written coursework, and then also the support material, which is what Andrea was describing, the actual worksheets, the assignments, the tests. So it's a full-on course. And then the second question, how do you actually reverse engineer something? That's a really interesting way to look at it, because I hadn't, to be honest, we haven't used that before or thought about it before. But it would be a really interesting thing to say, okay, here's a print, describe how was it printed, and we might actually, follow up on that.
Right, and we've definitely seen a few lessons on Thingiverse Education where teachers, bring in an object and say to the student, okay, reverse engineer this. Create it, again, on a CAD design program, right? And so, we plan to continue to add content to student certification and teacher certification as time goes by. This isn't the end all. We plan to continue to grow this program, and so that is something that we most likely see sometime in the future. So stay tuned for that.
Excellent. And Joyce from earlier is asking, what filament did you use for the dissolvable supports, and what free or cheap design software do we recommend for Windows 10?
Okay, so first on the filament side. The filament that we used is called PVA. It's polylactic vinyl acid or something like that, but PVA for short. It's very similar actually to Elmer's glue. The catch with that is that you need a two nozzle printer, so one printer that can print with two materials at once. For that, we only have the method available.
Mm-hmm.
In the past, we used to have the 2X. It's a tricky material to print with because of the fact that PVA is sensitive. As I said before, that supports dissolving water, which means that if you don't have a controlled environment for the material can degrade if it's exposed. So many of the desktop printers actually use PVA, but they don't have PVA enclosed, which means that you will start seeing issues with PVA soaking up water just by standing outside of a container. With Method, we actually have it sealed in a dry sealed bay. Many of the desktop printers expose it, and you'll have issues trying to print it if you're using one of those systems. But that's long answer for the straight answer is PVA. And on the second side, what software do we recommend that's free for Windows?
Or cheap.
Well, free is better than cheap. No, to be honest, I really love what Autodesk is doing with their software. Specifically, they have a platform called Fusion 360. They opened it up about 2 or 3 years ago. For students, it's free for anybody at any grade level to use, which is, I think, a great offering.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that you see also used a lot in the professional level. But also...
right, to add to that, Autodesk also has Tinkercad, which I'm sure some of you have already heard of. It's absolutely free. It is cloud-based, so you don't have to install any software.
Yep.
Depending on your IT environment, sometimes it can be a little complicated to download software. So Tinkercad is great. It's kind of like working with Legos in the computer, and so it's a great way to get more acquainted with working in 3D space, virtual 3D space. And so I'd say start with Tinkercad. If you've never done design before or CAD design before, start with Tinkercad and then move on to Fusion 360.
Definitely. And that's also one of the things that we cover through the operator course. Like what are those different software types and quick tips on that.
Yeah, what we recommend is best to start off with.
So Jeff is asking, one of the most difficult parts of integrating 3D printing is when students have a vision of what they want to design, but their skills may not be able to match what they want to design. So do we have any tips, like a couple of tips for overcoming that?
Right, so I'll say that again. Jeff, thanks for the question. How do we overcome the vision, the fact that sometimes the students will have the vision of what they want to do, but might not necessarily be able to how do we say, download it or express it in such a way.
Or achieve that vision.
Right. Quick answer, the student certification. it is actually kind of the goal, right? The goal of that certification is to help students actually envision something, then try to make it, sketch it or make it more tangible, and then make the thing. That's kind of the goal of the course. As a quick tip, I would say, personally, the thing that helps me the most is just sketching something out. I would start by sketching at a basic level, right? You don't have to have a master's degree or industrial design degree for you to sketch. But if you can simplify how people sketch, specifically, how do you see your object, let's say a cube, in different views, right? I would say try to get your kids to sketch something, and when they have this picture in their minds, ask them to sketch the front view, the side view, and the top view. That's a great way for you to begin to phrase out the design before you get started in CAD. Because sometimes in CAD it's kind of difficult to kind of really express that volume view of the object. But if you start with simple sketches that just show the different sides of the object, like for instance, we have this lunchbox here, right? It's a peel object. It does have a little bit, some details to it, like the chamfers, the fillets on it. But if you start just by seeing it, from the side, it's a block, from the side, thinner block, and then the top view, and then you start adding detail to it, I would say that's an easy way to overcome this problem.
Also, if you're trying to design something that's a little bit more complex, like we could say like this apple here, Felipe, I think you designed this, is that right? And so maybe someone who doesn't have all the skills that you might have quite yet, they could look at it and say, okay, what's a super simplified way of looking at this? So maybe it started out as just as a circle, and then, well, you could tell me how you designed it, but.
No, but and you mentioned it like on Tinkercad. So in Tinkercad, you actually get like what we call primitive solids. So basically, what's the name of it? Euclidean solids, which means cylinders, cubes, pyramids. So very basic shapes that you can start off with. If you think about the apple, it's kind of like a circle, and then with the stem. So how do you simplify that shape into more basic shapes so that you can get started?
Yeah, and as your skill set grows, you can start making those designs just a little bit more complex. All part of the process.
Jack, a ninth grade teacher, wants to wants to go through the program. Do they have a single seat option?
Jack, happy that you mentioned it. We're working on it. Right now we don't, but we offer only the classroom one. Again, I would say if you want to test it out and get started with it, you can definitely, I would recommend reach out to our sales team. They can probably get you started with some sort of sample. Otherwise, you can also look into the teacher certification, which is just a single seat. For students, we are working on opening just a single-seater option. The timeline is kind of like, it's coming in a few months, I think. But yeah, it's a great thing that we're working on.
Right, and that brings up a good point. This content won't be released until June 25th is when the doors will be open for those who have purchased it to actually take a look at, to get started with.
Which is why we wanted to make sure that we basically got you guys and your kids started right on the school calendar year. So that's the aim.
And I believe our last question from Louise is, are there any plans to align posted content on Thingiverse Education with ISTE standards?
Louise, you want to rephrase that?
So the question was if there are any plans to align posted content on Thingiverse with ISTE standards. So we are working, so let me backtrack. Teacher certification is aligned with ISTE standards. We do have the ISTE seal of alignment. For Thingiverse Education, it would be a little bit more difficult because the curriculum and the content that is added to Thingiverse Education is posted by educators, by everyone who visits Thingiverse Education. So it's much more difficult content to actually control and to get overall approval for.
We do have the standards, the NGS, what the previous question, right? The standards that teachers actually claim on their lessons.
Yes, we do have those standards, but they're a bit different from the ISTE standards.
Yeah, but that's a good one. Like teacher certification it's an ISTE, how is ISTE approved?
Seal of approval, of alignment, sorry. And once we're able to once we launch officially the content for certification for students, we'll also look to get that approval from ISTE as well. But that will be in time, to come.
And with that, I think we have a wrap up of the questions. Thanks again.
Thank you everyone for watching our webinar. We hope you enjoyed it and that you're excited as we are about MakerBot certification for students. So thank you so much for watching, and
do reach out if you have any questions. It does help us a lot to hear back from you guys. hello@makerbot.com. Oh, hello@makerbot.com. Comments, feedback, questions around sample lessons or things like that. It's always great to hear you, or things that you would like to hear in the next episodes. Hopefully we'll be doing more of these. But yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.